Hello and welcome to this World Economic Forum special event. My name is Dan Murphy from CNBC and I'm thrilled to be leading this Friday morning session. Welcome to everyone joining us online and welcome to all of you in the room. Thank you so much for being here. The next session is called the One-Person Enterprise. It's fair to say that technology has now evolved to the point where businesses no longer need to rely on traditional structures of large teams and physical infrastructure to scale. Instead, entrepreneurs today are leveraging technology to build nimble, high-performing companies, sometimes with just one person at the helm. So what does this mean for the future of entrepreneurship, talent strategy, capital raising, and the very notion of what it means to be an entrepreneur? Well, joining us are an expert panel of guests, including leaders from the forum's innovator community. Please join me in welcoming Kanjun, the CEO and co-founder of Imbue, which is pushing the boundaries of what AI can do to help humans make better business decisions. Benjamine is the CEO and co-founder of Formation Bio, which is doing exciting things to speed up and streamline biotechnology and healthcare innovation. Mitchell Green is the founder and managing partner of Lead Edge Capital. Mitchell has backed some of the biggest tech success stories of the last decade. You might have seen him on CNBC or on the slopes as a former nationally ranked alpine ski racer. And Sarah Franklin is the CEO of Lattice. It is a people management platform which is changing how companies approach talent management and performance. We're also joined by Richard Socher. He's the CEO of You.com, which is a personalized, customizable search engine. He's also the founder of AIX Ventures and the former chief scientist of Salesforce. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being here. Let's dive straight into the conversation. First of all, technology has evolved so rapidly now that entrepreneurs can essentially leverage it to build entire businesses from the ground up with minimal human resources. So how do you see this trend impacting the role of the entrepreneur? Please begin.
Yeah, so I think people often think that technology trends will manifest much faster than they do. And so what we see, we work on AI agents. And most people, they think of agents as, oh, you deploy an agent, it's going to replace a bunch of work. But what we see is that it's actually very hard to take an agent off the shelf and make it work well, especially in the enterprise. And so we've actually reconceptualized agents. You know, it's hard because of a few reasons. One, it doesn't necessarily know and fit all of your workflows. Two, delegating to an agent is actually a very hard thing to do. And so as a human, I struggle to delegate to my team. And so we've actually reconceptualized agents as, you know, what is an agent? It's this interface. It's a piece of software on your computer, talks to you, talks to your computer in code. So what is it? It lets me write code on my computer. And we find that that actually is a much more powerful view of agents because everyone implementing agents, they have to custom code stuff anyway. And so, yeah, that's what's happening. And I think for the new businesses coming up, there's going to be some really interesting stuff. But yeah, as the old businesses, you can only get so much efficiency.
Benjamin, what's your view? Can I get your take as well?
Sure. So, you know, I think we're living in one of the most exciting eras to be building companies. We have PhD level intelligence in your pocket, and we're beginning to see AI systems do the work of entire teams. And, you know, I think in that world, AI native companies have a pretty significant advantage. I'll kind of give you an example. It used to take our teams, many teams, about 2 months to do a patient recruitment campaign, you know, in the process of kind of drug development. You know, you had teams that had to research kind of a patient population, segment the different indications, and put together like IRB compliance, regulatory compliant, you know, patient brochures, ads, things that kind of touch the patients. Now it's one AI system with a human in the loop. And I think that has kind of profound impacts for, you know, all companies, but specifically, you know, really challenging implications for incumbents, right? It's easy to adopt software or AI tools when it allows one person to do 10x more work. It's really challenging when the system replaces entire sets of teams. And, you know, the common kind of refrain you'll get, you know, is the systems aren't ready. And, you know, maybe just to agree with what you just stated, they're not ready unless they're trained and integrated in the right workflows kind of over time. But if you're able to do that, you know, there's profound kind of upside. But you're asking, you know, a human to basically train something that, you know, all goes well, not only eliminates their job, but potentially kind of broader teams. And I think that's a enduring theme that will only get, I think, more consequential as these AI tools and systems get better and better over time.
Consequential and perhaps dystopian as well. So we're going to unpack that a little bit further.
Totally.
Mitch, give me your hot take.
No, so we, look, Global Growth Equity Fund, we have not backed any AI-specific companies, although you might argue ByteDance, is an AI company that's been using this stuff for 10 years to build it. That being said, every one of our companies in our portfolio are deeply involved in all the different aspects of using it. Now, a lot of it is trying, and sometimes it always doesn't work as good as they say it does, but it's a constant process of tweaking. And while we do think, we tend to think that we think we're living in an AI bubble, having invested in 98 and 99. That being said, there will be giant companies that are created out of this, and we tend to think that people usually get they get overexcited in the near term about technological change, but they massively underestimate it long term. And I think we're living through what will be the biggest tech revolution in the next 20 to 30 years.
The biggest tech revolution. Okay, really interesting. Sarah, what's your take?
So as you hear from everyone, this is a very exciting time, and AI is everywhere. Agents are everywhere. And this is a great new age of collaboration that we're moving into, where humans are collaborating with agents. And July of last year, at Lattice, we got ahead of this because this is also has very big societal implications for how we work together with AI agents in a way that we're putting the success of people as the primary. And so as agents enter the workforce, as the digital labor enters the workforce, the questions come about: how do we manage our agents? How do we interact with them? How do we keep ourselves transparent and accountable to the success of them? You may have an agent as a customer service representative. It could deflect a lot of cases, but are your customers still happy? We need to make sure that that happens. And we need to help humans work well together with agents. And this is what's most important, and we think an opportunity for leaders of people, because this is their north, is the success of people. And so this is very important for us with agents to also think about how we prioritize the success of people with them in our workforce.
Exactly, and where agents fit into the organizational structure as well, which is something that we're going to unpack. While we get your microphone fixed up, let's bring it over to Richard as well for his hot take. What's your perspective on the question, and how are you thinking about this issue?
Yeah, so we've shipped agents at U.com about a year and a half ago, and our customers have created over 50,000 different agents already on the platform. And they told us that they've seen somewhere between 5 to 80% automation for some tasks. And the way people react to it is very differently. Sometimes we have folks that sign up with their company email address. We reach out and say, hey, should your whole company maybe get on this platform? And some say, I just love this as my own superpower. I don't want everyone to know that I can create this much text and write these beautiful emails and reports so quickly. Some people say, I actually just work half the time. I don't want people to know that I am doing the same work in half the time. And then there's some executives who are like, yes, all my team should have this. Yeah. Right? And so it's a really interesting time, right? We as CEOs are going to be the first generation that manages people and AI. So we have learned to manage, but I think the most interesting change here is actually that every individual contributor, every employee is going to become a manager of AIs. And in that sense, they're all, everyone is going to become kind of an entrepreneur. If you care about the output of things, then you're just happy that AI will allow you to have more output. The impact of jobs, of course, will be a different one, right? Because if it's in sales and you have twice the sales because you're twice as productive with your AI agents, you're just happy to make twice the sales. If in service you have twice the productivity, or you have agents deflecting a bunch of cases, you might not need as much of your service staff. And so it's a really complex story of the whole impact. Really
so
exciting.
Do you think we're also barreling towards a future where founder is basically going to mean glorified AI wrangler?
I think, yeah, we're all going to be managers of AI. Every individual contributor will be, and that is one interpretation of the one company solo entrepreneur. The other interpretation is, of course, you will have one person who will really run an entire unicorn company with just AI agents. And I think that will be a little bit further out. You're going to have expertise, and I think as we all have to upskill our own employees and everyone else in the world has to upskill, we have to learn more and more discernment and evaluation of outputs of AI. understanding how I can quickly verify that the processes are working well with the AI versus creating the original work product myself.
Really interesting. I'm back over to Kanjun because you mentioned that you're actually building these AI agents. So give me a real-world example of how your technology helps entrepreneurs and businesses to make more informed decisions. And what do you see as the most disruptive force that will ultimately impact how founders operate in the future?
That's a great question. I think people talk about AI agents as if it's something new, and it kind of is, but really it's just fancy software. And it's fancy software that makes decisions a little bit more than previously and can deal with data that's a little bit more ambiguous. So that's how we see it. We let people make fancy software. That's what our product does. It's in private alpha right now, and so I won't be able to talk about the impact yet, but maybe next year.
Okay, very interesting. But we don't know where the technology is going to be next year as well. I think that's also fair to say.
Yeah, I think there's actually some pretty good sense of where the technology will be next year. And I think in a lot of ways, the software just gets fancier and fancier. Something where, you were talking about how enterprises are using U.com to automate, much of their workflows and putting their workflows into software. That's really what's happening, is that all of us are putting our workflows into software. Now the software can run our workflows, and that's where you get more and more automation and a single person being able to do more and more.
I wanted to go over to Benjamin as well, because Formation Bio describes itself as an AI native pharma company. Just unpack that for me. And the reason I ask is because this AI native phrase is something that we hear more and more often now. It's something that a lot of startups actually claim. So how is it different to, say, Sergey Brin and Larry Page experience in building Google in a garage back in the 90s?
Yeah, it's a great question. And maybe to start with, what is a tech company and what is an AI native company? So I've always thought kind of a tech company is a company that scales non-linearly with productivity and output and kind of humans, right? And an AI native company is a subset of that instead of scaling with kind of non-linearly, it actually just scales with AI, right? Agents, models, systems with kind of a human in the loop until, frankly, the human is out of the loop. And I think that's one of the most kind of profound shifts, and how this, in my opinion, is a little bit different from kind of software, is that in the long run, every company will look like, founder or some set of really important kind of decision makers with agents, models, infrastructure, and the humans in the loop. And almost kind of everyone's job is almost to train the systems that increasingly will, frankly, displace a lot of current kind of human roles. The irony here, and there's a lot of dichotomies here, in the short term, human talent is going to be extremely important, and specifically the senior level talent and the folks with kind of judgment. Right? And they understand what great looks like, what a great decision looks like. In our case, it's experienced drug developers who understand, what is a great drug, how do you pick kind of the right drug, all these kind of things. In pharma, so much of what we do is knowledge work, right? So I kind of gave that patient recruitment example, but if, let's say we're thinking about a new obesity drug, a big kind of task is researching all the current obesity drugs, where's the white space, how do you put together a drug development plan to go and develop a drug to tackle where there's still unmet need. That's something that these AI agents and systems are doing a really, really great job, but with a very experienced human kind of expert in the loop. And so, one of the things that we anticipate will happen is, the kind of entry analyst kind of roles. You're kind of seeing this even in a Google and in a Microsoft. Those are the roles that are getting displaced because the companies are training the AI agents, right, versus actually the entry-level employees. Increasingly, there's a talent for those folks that know how to really make those kind of higher order decisions and that experience that a human has. And then in the long run, these systems will garner increasingly more of those kind of judgment calls. And so you're looking for, as an AI native company, for a few things. Employees who can rapidly adapt, have the ability to update their mental models quickly, because the reasoning models every quarter get that much better. So something that you thought the agents and the models couldn't do a good job, they tend to kind of increase kind of really, really quickly. You look for folks that pride themselves not in the mastery of one specific narrow task, but building the engine that can do the task kind of for you in the future. And I think like these kind of characteristic traits are kind of quite different than your standard enterprise, right? That might look for someone who's great at medical writing, or just does kind of SOPs or drafts documents or reads legal contracts very narrowly. You want the lawyer that can build the system.
Really interesting. And I also wanted to talk about the financing of all of this as well. And Mitch, this is where you come in. You mentioned before that you haven't written a check yet for an AI company. Maybe you can just expand on that for us. And when I speak with capital allocators and investors on CNBC, one thing they often say to me is that they choose to allocate capital based on the personality, whether or not they actually like the person or they believe in the person that they're speaking to. What happens when that person is ultimately replaced with AI? Would you put your money behind an AI founder?
Well, look, the quant hedge funds have done quant hedge funds have been around for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases, like D.E. Shaw or Renaissance. And so this stuff has been going on for a long time. I think you're going to need somebody to still read them. One thing, and I'm actually very curious to hear Richard's view on this, given he was the chief scientist at Salesforce, is like incumbent versus new. It is our belief, and by the way, it is an amazing time to be an entrepreneur right now, because there is, Matt Kohler from Benchmark is a very good friend of mine, and he says, look, you want to be an investor when capital is tight, because then you get better deals out of the entrepreneur. The reverse is true when there's tons of capital. So it is an amazing time to be an entrepreneur right now and starting these companies, because there is so much money flowing into them. And look, it's all about the people. It's about the people, the CEO. We tend to invest in businesses that are slightly larger, 10, 20, 50, 100 million revenue. 50, 60% of our businesses that we invest in are profitable companies. But at the early stages, it's all about the founder. Like if I was an early stage investor, I don't even know Richard, but given he was the chief scientist of Salesforce, that's an amazing background. Those are the types of people that you want to back on. The one thing that we struggle with a lot of these companies, not all of them, some of these companies have incredible metrics, is we focus a lot on gross dollar retention. And what net gross dollar retention is, if you end the year with $100 of sales, what did you end the next year at from those same exact customers, but don't include upsells? And so and what we're seeing in a lot of these companies are, good gross dollar retention is 90+%. Great gross dollar retention is 95+%. If you look at the enterprise, I don't obviously know what Salesforce is on the enterprise side's gross dollar retention is. It's probably 98 or 99%. Because once you install Salesforce and spend millions or tens of millions of dollars installing the product, it's effectively impossible to get rid of it. And so what we're seeing is, in a lot of these companies, lots of people are, if you look at every Fortune 500 company or every Fortune 1000 company, if you listen to their earnings calls, the word AI would probably be mentioned in every one of them.
100%.
So everybody is trying this stuff. Some of these companies are delivering incredible promises, and some of them are yeah, it doesn't really work, or I can't get rid of all these people. But maybe it's definitely making me more productive, though. And so that's been our biggest challenge so far.
How do you see this being disrupted, though, and what do you think it means for the role of a traditional VC in the funding ecosystem?
So what do I think it means? There's too much money chasing too few great entrepreneurs. That's just the reality of it. I do think, though, the whole COVID, you're seeing entrepreneurs, you don't have to be in Silicon Valley, where in 10, 15 years ago, Sequoia or Benchmark would not. There are exceptional cases where really you needed to be in San Francisco to get some of these great venture firms to fund you. I think now, we have a company in our portfolio, Grafana Labs, that's nearly 400 million of ARR, and they don't growing 70% a year in the DevOps space, and they don't have headquarters. They don't have offices. It's all remote. And I suspect the percentage of new companies being started now is exponentially higher remote. So it's great. Entrepreneurs can work anywhere.
Wow, it's so interesting. Sarah, I want to bring it back over to you, because we are 5 years post-pandemic now, and there is still a conversation taking place, an argument, if you will, about the future of remote work. But you started a really interesting conversation last year when Lattice rolled out a digital workers feature that basically put AI agents into an org chart and then assigned them a responsible manager. So I want you to speak to this. People said it put bots on the same level as humans. So when you made that decision, were you thinking, okay, AI should be treated as an employee and a tool, or were you thinking this is where AI is moving in the future, so these AI agents need to be part of the org chart on a full-time, permanent basis?
So what we were thinking with that innovation was that we want to prioritize the success of people as the primary. And when you're working with AI agents, it's important to understand what they're assigned to be doing and for other people in the organization to understand what they're doing. And also to have transparency within the workplace. CEOs right now, everyone's looking at how to reshape their company in this new age. You have also, I want to add, I think this is an incredible time for entrepreneurs and venture to go outside of what is the traditional entrepreneur and look to incredible people that have ideas that might not have come from a technical background. And this could be a great creative age for us where so many more ideas are able to be, unleashed and built and created. But this world requires us to look at this reshaping and hold ourselves accountable. Companies spend today about 70% on average of their total capital on headcount. And as we shift that around, we need to be very, very responsible and transparent for the decisions that we're making with headcount dollars if we're going to replace them with AI agent dollars and hold ourselves accountable to that success. And so that's really where it comes from, is that there's a balance of excitement for all of the innovation and opportunity that awaits us with our obligation to be responsible in how we deploy this. And that was really the thoughts behind it. Not saying that AI is human, more saying we need to clearly identify where AI is. And as AI speaks on behalf of brands and people, makes decisions on behalf of brands and people, and integrates with other systems, we need to be able to track that. And just like we track any interaction I may have in my CRM or my Jira or my source code repository, we need to know where it came from so that we can hold ourselves accountable to the outcomes.
Sarah, when do I get to write my reviews using AI and Lattice? We're customers, so. Were you guys working towards it? Like, it's amazing. I just wrote a recommendation.
It's today.
Like, I had a bunch of recs that I had to write in the last month for like business schools for people that work for us. Like, it is incredible how easy this stuff is. I wrote a couple of them manually and then went and used some of the systems to do it. Like, how far away do you think you are to making the review process at the end of the year just so much easier for people?
We have that today.
Yeah.
You do have to turn it on. There's like a, so we do believe also that it's a choice of whether you want to bring AI into your system. So you need to have your administrator toggle it on. But that is there. Also, it's really there's so.
Is it highly? Are people? Is it a well-used feature so far, or is it still like pretty limited?
Yes, about 2/3 of our customers are using it. Also, AI helping to create custom growth plans and career coaching, and really democratizing this for all employees. So within systems like Lattice, it is so powerful what we can do to make things more personalized. All of your onboarding is no longer one size fits all. It's bespoke and real time. And this is an incredible age. But yes, today in Lattice, you can do that. And thank you for being a wonderful customer.
We might get into a place where you say, take these 3 bullet points and write a really long, nice letter of recommendation.
Do it
and then the other side will say, summarize me this long letter into the 3 main bullet points after.
Make me a great review.
It's already happening.
Young, trustworthy, yeah.
The one thing, though, that is an interesting topic is we do believe at Lattice that AI should not do the stack rank and then decide, like, these are the performers that you might need to have conversations with, because you do need to have the human decision. What's incredible is that systems within Lattice, we also integrate to your other systems of work. Again, even if you have an agent working for you within a source code repository or a CRM, being able to pull that information in, the human brain cannot understand all of the information and the nuance to it. So I think that it's going to help us have better understanding and also go into this great age of better collaboration, because language is no longer a barrier. Understanding is no longer a barrier. We can have information distilled for us in a way that helps us be better together as humans.
Yeah. To play devil's advocate here, sorry, just to jump in, I also think that while we're seeing this rapid disruption take place within organizations and in industry with technologies like yours, at the same time, there's a genuine threat that all of this is going to lead to widespread job losses and perhaps even social collapse. Can you speak to that?
Well, this is why reskilling and staying ahead of this is paramount. We need to define what are the roles of the future. What are the things that people need to be doing as they work together with AI? How can we redeploy our talent? And again, I just go back to holding ourselves accountable to the decisions. We can go to the moon right now, but we can't sustain human life at scale on the moon, so we're not sending people at scale to the moon right now. So maybe a weird analogy, but we need to hold ourselves accountable to, as we bring AI in, let's do it responsibly so that the humans can also adjust as we're working together with AI.
I think you're also going to
add to that,
have a lot of job creation too, though, by the way. Like, if you think about when the iPhone came out, 06, 07, whatever it was, like, Uber's a $100 billion company. Airbnb is a $100 billion company. Like, Uber could not have existed before this. And we think you're going to see a whole new class of, it's like somebody, I'm sure there are 10 people going after Sarah's, legacy business you're going to use AI to build a big business. But your business already existed, but you probably have 10 AI first ones. A lot of those companies will just disappear. Where the opportunity is going to be is like the companies we're not even thinking about yet that are going to be these next just giant businesses. And that's going to lead to
Google
jobs.
librarians lost their jobs because of Google.
There's also something really important that you said about empowering people and upskilling them. I think it's actually the narratives that we tell about agents matter a lot. Right now, we talk about agents as if they're autonomous bots that are supposed to replace tasks and supposed to replace people. But kind of why I've said they're just software is I think it's actually really important to think of them as tools for people and to think about how do we use those tools and train people to use these tools. Because what we see is there's a huge difference between someone who's really good at using AI systems, like prompting them, et cetera, versus someone who's not. They get so much more value out of it. And so thinking of an AI as a tool that is supposed to be custom built for people is really important. And then secondly, training them in order to use those tools. And what we find we work with software developers. In software development, AI is actually teaching junior software developers how to be better. So a junior software developer will ask a system to generate code and then to explain that code and then to explain why there's a bug. And we see them learning and upskilling really fast. And we also see people who are non-technical on our team starting to learn to code and starting to learn to make software. I think the most empowering view of AI agents is actually as one that allows everyone in the world to create their own software on their computer and to mold their computer to what they want. And when you think about one-person enterprise, that's a situation where you've got this system that's molded to you and helping you do everything that you want to do in this company or that you want to deploy.
I'd like to offer a bit of a different perspective because I do think there's a lot of talk about, retraining, upskilling, but there's something quite unique about the pace of developments and how quickly these models are getting better, and specifically where we're seeing these AI systems do the work of entire teams, again. And,
my point.
And I think the secular trend is actually there's going to be huge amounts of job displacement unless, to Sarah's point, we as a society, kind of make a decision that, there's certain things that we don't want to displace these set of jobs this kind of quickly. We've thought deeply at Formation Bio around this kind of issue because, to your point, it could feel very dystopian, very unsettling. And the way we kind of think about it is, today there are a lot of amazing drugs that are discovered, and with AI, the discovery is only getting more efficient. A lot of drugs can't get developed because of the high cost and time of drug development. And so we kind of did like this exercise, like kind of deep, like first principles moral kind of exercise and said, well, if every job in the pharmaceutical industry goes away, but we're able to do drug development drastically more efficiently, and we can get more medicines out to patients, cheaper, lower cost, because drug development is now not 2.6 billion for every new drug, it's a fraction because now you're scaling with AI versus humans, that's net good for the world. I'm not sure that's the case for all this kind of job displacement because, and we do something pretty sophisticated, and we kind of, if we kind of zoom out and think about how this, kind of evolves over time, reasoning models went from, top, 100,000 coder to top 150 in ELO scores, just with the O3 kind of model. Probably there won't be a human that's better than the AI kind of coder very shortly. Even when we think about something that's complicated as drug development, our chief development officer is using this kind of tool now, from a reasoning perspective to think about his kind of chain of thought and training out the AI systems to say, well, why did we think this one drug had a higher probability of success than this other kind of right drug? And the consequence of that over time, as we hire the great kind of human experts, as we discussed, is the AI systems will be able to kind of think through a lot of these multidimensional things probably better than we can in the long run. And so I think the whole theme of this is we're talking about a one-person unicorn. We're talking about Uber, we're talking about NVIDIA, $3.5 trillion company that's hiring orders of magnitude less people, right? We think about the market cap per human ratio. What is a tech company? What is an AI native company? They're companies that scale super nonlinear by definition. So they're eating a lot of productivity and they're hiring less people. So I think that's something that we just have to be open about, because I think everything that I've seen in the long run is that if we don't take a proactive approach, and I totally agree with Sarah, and think about how to do this responsibly, the natural kind of course is that this displacement is going to first actually affect our young people, right? Because these are the analyst jobs that we talked about, where Google, Microsoft, all these big companies are hiring less entry-level software engineers. And we kind of all know the challenges when you have really young, talented people that feel disenfranchised.
So I think medicine is a great example where everyone agrees that it should be mostly outcome and output based. No one wants more jobs in medicine. They want more drugs developed that work well for people. They want healthier people, faster, cheaper, not more jobs. So it's an interesting one. But I think it helps us a little bit to zoom out, think about previous disruptions. 150 years ago, over 90% of people worked in agriculture. If you told those people there's going to be these agents called tractors that will take most of your jobs, they're like, oh, what else are we going to do? And now they want to be social media influencers. There's so many new roles that zero people were able to anticipate 150 years ago, right?
And so Google has led to more jobs, not less jobs.
Exactly. And so I think what will obviously happen is that we'll all work at much higher levels of abstraction, right? Instead of doing very small, medial, repetitive tasks, all of those will go away and we have to execute. I think maybe to talk to Kanjun's point, like very concretely, when she talks about software, imagine how you can just say, I want the new app. I want an app where it shows me the things where I'm on a panel at WEF, and this app should also triangulate where I get the best food option that doesn't suck in Davos. And at the same time, I don't want to miss like these two politicians. And then you have a custom app on your phone that you just built. Very few people are thinking, wow. And now if that app takes off and other people are like, should I prompt this myself? Or can I just pay that because I don't have the time right now, even the 10 hours to prompt this thing properly? Like, that changes the entire economy. And I think what that ultimately means for a lot of CEOs is that we have responsibilities to help people upskill, but also it's a government question of social safety nets and continuing adult education.
I don't disagree. I think an X factor in this is the pace. And you look at the banking when the ATMs came out and the amount of time it took for tellers to go into other jobs that were being created. The time frame was long. The pace is not long here. The pace is exponentially fast. And this is a curve where the reskilling is not going to keep up. And so this is why, I rewind, you mentioned social media and iPhone. Those were innovations in early 2000s. It wasn't until over a decade plus later that we had things like GDPR to regulate data privacy, or the iPhone came out with their own way for us to self-regulate our addiction to mobile phones with screen time. But fast forward a decade and we're living in an anxious generation and we're addicted to our devices. And so I just want us to agree that hope cannot be our strategy. And this is why we feel that we need to have a clear way to manage AI in the digital workforce, and that we need to go into this eyes wide open, very clear-eyed, so that we can make the right decisions for society, so that we can steer us to a more utopian than dystopian, and so that we can my own daughter, my oldest daughter is 20 and in college, and I worry for her future where I see entry-level jobs evaporating. And I tell her, this is why you need to not just be AI literate, you need to be AI proficient, and this is what we need to be teaching. Even ourselves, myself, I turned 50 this year. This is an old dog that I teach myself new tricks every day, and I go in and make sure I keep myself relevant. And this is the responsibility for us and all of us here at the forum to do, so that we go into a utopian society with this incredible technology.
Absolutely fascinating. Oh, jump in, Kanjun.
The last thing I want to say is I also think the levers and tools that we give people to be able to modify and control their agents is really important. And we think of this in terms of, there's a term that we use when it comes to software that we call resistibility. So today we live in a software environment where actually a lot of the software that we're surrounded by is not that resistible. The notifications we get, the way our social media feed is structured. Our social media feed is actually the first example of an agent that is really impacting our lives, that is making decisions on our behalves. And so I think going into the future, to your point about people being able to make your own app, I'm actually going to take that one step further and say it's actually really important for most software not just to be creatable, but also editable, remixable, so that I can have a lot more control over my digital environment and my future. And I think that's going to create a world where it's a little bit more empowering. And at the same time, we do really need to think about job loss and reskilling and think about, I think the narrative here is really important because if we think about agents, that's not great. But if we think about how do we build tools, more tools so that people have more levers, more choice, more empowerment at work, that's important. And one final thing on this is if we say, okay, we're going to build an AI agent that automates jobs, then I as CEO will think, okay, how do I find swaths of jobs that I can automate? But if we say we're going to build AI tools that help all of our people develop software, or we're going to build AI tools so that each person can build their own agents, then I'm going to think, oh, how do I train my team so that each person knows how to make agents so that they can automate their own workflow? And that's a really different set of actions, a really different philosophy. And so I think we need to be talking about this in the technology quite differently.
It's a fair point. We have a really good-looking audience surrounding us in the room, so I think it's their opportunity to ask some questions as well, if you would like. If you have any questions for our panel, please raise your hand. Now is your time to speak. We'd love to hear from you. And if there isn't anyone who has an immediate question, I'm just looking around. No one's curious to ask a question. I've asked a lot of questions already. Okay, we'll wait a while. I have one more question. While you maybe do some idea generation in the room to think about some questions, I want to know from our panel, what is one thing that an AI agent can automate for you today, but you are willing to allow it to automate, and why? Not willing to allow it to automate, and why?
I'll just give a concrete example from one of our customers. There's actually a company called Mimecast, and they came to us and said, we compared you to ChatGPT, everyone, you're better. We buy 200 seat licenses. We're like, great. And then we did a workshop still with them, and then they bought 500 more seat licenses after the workshop. And that's when I realized even a tech-forward company that understands all this impact, it helps to realize, wow, engineering, HR, recruiting, sales, service, marketing, everyone can benefit from this technology. And one example that I hadn't thought of was a marketer. A marketer, basically, they said, every month or so, I get a big PDF file of like a bunch of new features, and I'm told to basically then write 2 email marketing campaigns, and then write 3 tweets and maybe 5 LinkedIn messages about these new features. And then I go publicly out and see, well, are they actually novel? Does the competition have them? What kinds of features do they have? How do they differentiate? And then basically we said, well, just describe exactly what you just said to your agent, describe those end steps, and then drag and drop that PDF into e.com, and then it'll just go through those steps. And they're like, whoa, like that's basically 50% every 4 weeks. That's 50% of my week or more, and it just did it. They told us like a few days after, and they're like, now I understand it. And then that's how that company realized, like, wow, even marketing can benefit from an agent.
Something that I find exciting right now, just a little bit of a different lens on the job piece, is that agents are able to help us find talent, people talent in other places. Like, Nancy's company, MoonHub, is an incredible one where it helps you recruit. And if you want to hire people, you can hire them from all over the world and find people that you might not traditionally be looking for. And so that's something where for us to look at how can we put an agent to help us recruit better and bring in people that are from anywhere, from different walks of life, but have the skills that we need. I think this is an incredible agent for us to be using right now to bring people into the workforce from all over the world.
What are you unwilling to?
Oh, you asked not willing.
Yeah, what are you unwilling to allow these things to do?
So I mentioned earlier, but not willing to do the performance assessment to give somebody a score, it still needs to have the human that can take the information, synthesize, understood. But when you're evaluating people, that still needs to be done by a person.
Our kind of philosophy is there's really nothing. There's certain judgment calls that you still want a human in the loop. In the long run, I think that's where the world, is going to go. And maybe to the early question, what are some hallmarks of AI native companies? One is the talent that you hire in, and so we really struggle to hire anyone who isn't proficient in the tools today. We're 2-3 years into the GPT moment, right? And if you haven't started using the tools today, it kind of not only means you're not an early adopter, but you're not using some of the best practices, and having that inherent curiosity, I think, is a really important kind of thing. You mentioned kind of Google, John Doerr and Mike Moritz are investors in both our company and kind of Google collectively. And they said what made Larry and Sergey special was they always used what's kind of best practice tools, and AI is clearly one of these kind of things. And then we look for folks who also are excited about a world where their org is actually completely transformed by AI. And so instead of kind of that normal friction, that maybe a bigger enterprise might face, you have a really aligned group that is excited and actively always looking to kind of update their tools. There is one thing, though, that we, and I personally don't replace AI with, and that's any kind of relationship building. If we're going to have dinner, or I want to create a really kind of meaningful relationship, or I want to be a caregiver and deliver care to people I really care about and spend time with, those are things that I think are deeply human. I have a utopian version of AI, and I think relevant to what you said, Richard, earlier, is like, if we get this right, we might have the ability to have actually 20-hour work weeks, where your AI systems are doing the consequential job, and there's certain kind of responsibility and like important decisions that you always want the humans to have some sort of kind of oversight over. And then, everyone gets to spend their time on things that truly matter, right? Time with loved ones, living longer and healthier, going and really understanding what it means to be deeply human. People creating arts, people having times to really kind of hone their hobby, versus really needing to do these tasks that we've historically maybe kind of found mission and purpose in, that if we kind of zoom out and says, is this actually where you want to be spending the majority of your time, which historically has been work? I think if we get some of the broader regulations and how we want to deploy these things right, there's a really kind of compelling future ahead of us.
Can we just
doubling down?
Can we just pause for a second? Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask, just in the moments that we have left? No? Or maybe one in the front? Right here behind you. Yes, sir. You can introduce.
Should I stand? Okay.
Yeah.
Dan Vedat, founder and CEO of Huma. Huma is one of the leading healthcare AI companies. So I'm a big believer of AI myself, and we use it within the healthcare space. I guess the questions I have in human history, when you look at the past, thousands of years, nothing has been achieved easy. Every, iterations, every evolutions we've gone through, it took a long time. And when we listen to everybody in the past 2 years, feels like the AI is taking over really easy, too easy, which kind of, with the word kind of perspective of inertia and all these things, it doesn't add up to my mind. And then it brings the other questions that, are we, all of us, and I'm like beneficiary of AI, momentum, are we hyping it because we all benefit from it? More funding come to it, and it creates more momentum. Maybe it benefits us, maybe it accelerates. But by hyping it, we create some other consequences that we may not think about it correctly at the moment. And also then lots of resources get wasted, and some of the paths that we could have explored, we may miss. I was just wondering what the panel think about that.
I think you're not wrong about the fact that things are being adopted really easily, and it feels much easier than it should be. And I think you're hearing some success stories here around adoption, but there are a lot of failure stories where...
But how real they are?
The success stories?
Yeah,
how real are the success stories?
Go, we all can say, we do this, we do that. If I come and dig in, I'm one of the biggest healthcare AI companies in the world, in our category. And we use AI, and I know lots of companies. when you dig in, it's not as much yet. Now, maybe 1 year from now, magic happens. I'm not saying it's not possible. But I feel there is a sense of hyping. Too much.
You don't think?
Yeah, there's
so I
definitely.
Yeah, so like the future is already here. It's just not equally distributed.
Exactly.
Right? And so we've had agents for a year and a half. Somehow the world didn't notice. We didn't market it enough. Other people now have it. Now they talk about forces of agents, and now the people get it, right? So that same thing will be true. Yesterday, the president or chairman of the International Monetary Fund said that she expects a massive 1% improvement to the world economy based on AI. And in Silicon Valley, we all talk about 1,000% and things like that, right? But the truth is, yeah, there are some stretches of Germany and the US that don't even have broadband internet yet, right? Like Biden's tried to spend billions of dollars, very little new broadband internet coverage was created. So when you don't have internet, you're not gonna have agents. Right? So yes, the future is going to be here. Agents will be there. There will be companies like yours that are full on in, right? And then there will be a gap more and more. But doubling down on your very positive and utopian things, I do think whenever technology gets into a field and into an area of products and services at scale, we eventually have a phone where a middle-class teenager and a billionaire use the same iPhone. And if you think about what are the products and services that current billionaires have that a middle-class teenager doesn't, and you realize the potential of AI, there is a lot of good reason to be very positive. We will all have personal assistants. There aren't enough people, and logically, not every person can have a personal assistant, because then, personal assistants will have to have a personal assistant. But we'll have that. We'll have personal healthcare teams for us, personal doctors. We'll have personal tutors for our kids. Those are all goods and services that only the wealthy can afford right now, and in 100 years from now, it'll be obvious that, of course, you're going to ask your assistant to book that trip. Of course, you're going to ask them. But even booking a trip, there's a lot of hype around agents, and people say, oh, yeah, I'll just ask this agent to book my trip, London, hotel, flight, oh, and it's done. And I'm like, no way.
I just want Microsoft Outlook to suggest when I put something around my calendar. It's like, oh, maybe you should buy an airplane.
Operator just came out yesterday. I thought it was pretty compelling. So those kind of booking things beginning to happen.
Okay, team, so we are in overtime now, but I just wanted to finish up with maybe one final thought from each of you with this question, and it's about where we go from here. How soon before we see the first one-person enterprise becoming $1 billion company, and in what industry or sector will it be in?
Is it revenue or valuation?
Yeah, let's talk about valuation.
Value.
Oh, valuation could be very quick, right?
Yeah.
I think actually we've already seen it in a way. So WhatsApp is an example of a company that was valued at a huge amount and had 17 people or 30 people, I think, when they were acquired for $17 billion. Midjourney is actually another good example, very small team, huge amount of revenue. And we're seeing that more and more with AI companies. I think the places where it'll be easiest and first are kind of bottoms up, either consumer or prosumer products that don't require large go-to-market teams. I think go-to-market is actually one of the places where, as you said about relationships, it's going to be difficult to automate all of these relationships with other people. Enterprises buy our products not because our products necessarily perform better, but because they trust us more. And so that trust, that human-to-human trust, I think is still very necessary, very important. And also, when it comes to agents, there's this issue around trust you were asking about, what do you not let your agent do? Decision-making is something that we should be cautious to let our agents do too much of. And so when it comes to decisions that are really important or high value, there are some, and relationships that are really important and high value, there are some companies that naturally require a lot more of those and other companies that require less.
Mitch?
I think it'll be a long time until you see a one-person public company, but I do think there are already quant hedge funds that run billions of dollars with a couple people. Within these quant hedge funds have been around for a while. But again, a two-person quant hedge fund that's making $50 million a year is not going to be a public company, but they're great businesses. But they already exist.
Sarah?
I agree. I think it'll be a while for just a one-person company, but I think another interesting thing is when we'll have AI more running a company or running a nation, and so that might be something else which is part of the future as well.
Ben?
I think depends how you define it. NVIDIA, $100 million per employee right now, at $3.5 trillion market cap company. I think we have the potential to have it. My kind of view is it's going to take a long time because being an entrepreneur is kind of a lonely journey, and you want a co-founder. I'm very grateful to have a co-founder. So, you might want to people, but the potential to do there, I think, is earlier than people think. The desire to do that, because companies are still started by humans. I think you will want some people to share the journey with.
Rich, you get the final word. Bring it home for us.
You all said it very well. Co-founders are amazing. It's it's lonely at the top, and if you're the only one, they're only AI agents, so it kind of get kind of boring too, to some degree. I think we heard it. It's somewhere between -5 years to +50 years, depending on how we define that.
Okay, that was, I'll let you off. That was a pretty easy one, but appreciate the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank my panel, Kanjun, Benjamin, Mitchell, Sarah, and Richard. And on behalf of the World Economic Forum, thank you so much for watching, and thanks for tuning in.